YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with my updated college football rankings just before week 10 of college football. A lot of movement, and we do this video every single week. We do a power rankings video for the NFL, and we have all kinds of predictions for both college football and NFL every single week throughout the year here. And just before we get started, we are trying to get to that 40K goal by 2020. So if you didn't subscribe to our channel yet, please help us out. Check out the rest of the channel. Plenty of sports content here. So if you can join us for those videos and subscribe, click that like button, and check us out on Twitter at GoatHouseNFL. Back to the rankings, we see four schools drop from my top 25 from last week. That's unfortunate. And then just miss only two teams I strongly considered. I'm not just going to throw a bunch of teams up there. Only teams that I, kind of gave a chance here to make them in my top 25 based on what they've done this year. Again, these aren't predictions. These are week-by-week power rankings based off what team's done. Number 25 is going to be the Memphis Tigers. Had a pretty good season. Still haven't really played. I mean, there's a battle going on in that conference, but still haven't had the best resume in terms of, top teams they played or super impressive wins. But they've been an impressive team this year and have some solid wins. Want to see a little more, but they still come in at number 25. It's just comparing teams like that to teams that have 3 losses but that are, powerhouse teams. It is tough, but to me, winning and winning streaks, losing streaks, those things matter. Number 24 is San Diego State, kind of a sleeper team. Looking through their resume actually looks better than once, realized. I think that UCLA win early in the year helps, and they've really have a similar resume as Boise State, and we see Boise State gets a little more respect, and maybe that's really not fair. So San Diego State definitely puts up a fight with teams like that, schools like that get a little more appreciation in terms of the rankings. But in a similar resume, too, which kind of goes unnoticed. Number 23 is Wake Forest. Still has that tough loss to Louisville, which they almost came back on. But they have some solid wins throughout the year. And they're back into the rankings. Had them in the rankings before. That loss to Louisville dropped them down. They are back in the rankings to number 23. So far, 25 up to 23. Those teams are new this week. They just missed the cut last week. Number 22, a team we just talked about, and no movement there. They stayed at 22 is Boise State, not playing this week. They were undefeated a couple weeks ago and then moved down a good amount after their first loss. At 21 is going to be Iowa, moving up 2 spots. They were at 23. You see the Big Ten, there's maybe more tough battles than you originally think. I know there's free wins, and that's what I don't like about the Big Ten. I also don't like some of their non-conference scheduling, and there's some free wins like Rutgers in there, but a lot of these teams are tight, like teams like Iowa and some other teams we'll talk about, and it ends up being a tough schedule and a lot of battles, and they move up to 21. And number 20 is Wisconsin. Dropping a bit again. It's mainly that Illinois loss. That's a loss you can't have on your resume. You really can't have it, even though Illinois is kind of picking things up now. That should be a free win, really. So that loss brought them down a lot for me. I had them drop more than the AP did, and now I have them drop a little more again because losing. I know you play Ohio State, but 2 games straight isn't. It's not good. That means something to me. Losing 2 games straight and having that Illinois one is just still hurting a little bit. And then staying at number 19 is Appalachian State. Yeah, they're still undefeated. That's impressive. Some other teams did some really impressive things and moved up ahead of them. It's not really, they didn't do enough to move up. It's more the other teams. Wish they have a North Carolina win, but wish there was a little more than that, but they are undefeated. Moving up to number 18, that they were not ranked last week. Not ranked at all. They have been ranked in my rankings this year, though. Kansas State, a good win against Oklahoma like that will boost you up. I mean, that's a big-time win. The Big 12 is actually looking better with teams like Kansas State, teams like, Baylor. So it's an impressive. They have an impressive resume, even though you wish they didn't have 2 losses. But their resume, to me, is more impressive than some of these other 2-loss teams that may be ahead of them on an AP poll or a college football playoff poll. Or who knows there, but that was a big win against Oklahoma. They dominated. I know it ended up being close, and it was a questionable call at the end, but they dominated that game. They dominated it, so they need to move up big time. They're up to 18. Super impressive. 17, moving up 1 spot, is Cincinnati. Still only loss is to Ohio State. It was a bad loss, but it was Ohio State. But other than that, they've been pretty darn good this year. A couple solid wins. maybe need to see a little more. Moving down to 16 from number 9 is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, a very disappointing loss against Michigan. It was a downpour there, so the teams were kind of forced to. It forced a game change a little bit. Teams were, we got to see who was the tougher and more physical team, and no question, Michigan was that. So Notre Dame with a disappointing and big-time loss there. They just, if you watch that game, it was, Ian Book was disappointing, but I put a lot of blame on the play calling. Play calling early was pretty poor. They were insisting on running the ball on early downs, mainly first down every time. When they were down about 17-0, they were continuing to do it, and they weren't getting anything, and they were just insisting on it. I just felt like throwing the ball up to Claypool was working, and they kind of just waited a little too long to go back to that. Poor game planning, poor coaching in that game, I thought. But Michigan was by far the more tough and physical team. Impressive. 15 is the undefeated SMU Mustangs, and undefeated in a couple solid wins. They seem to be getting better too. So they move up to 15, or stay right at 15, I should say. Just some other teams that it's just too tough for them to pass, even though they did pass. A team like Notre Dame, they hop over because Notre Dame's lost. Number 14 is going to be Michigan. We just talked about them. They were at 20 last week, so they move up from 20 to 14, actually. And, impressive win over a good Notre Dame team. A dominating win. Shows how physical they can be. And maybe we saw at the end of the Penn State game, the offense started to get some things going. They almost came back in that game. And we couldn't really tell if, maybe they figured something out. Maybe something happened here. Or maybe it was just kind of Penn State let off the pedal a little bit. But it looks like maybe they get a little something going here. They found out they can run the ball pretty well. So they moved up to 14, even with 2 losses. And at number 13, another 2-loss team is Auburn. They were number 10 last week. They moved down 3 spots. They put up a real good fight with LSU, a very good football team, but they still have 2 losses. So they are the top 2-loss team there, remaining at number 13. Number 12 is an undefeated Minnesota team. Super impressive team. They continue to dominate, but they do, the resume isn't that pretty. Even though undefeated resume is pretty, they haven't really played the best teams yet, but they have won in dominating fashion. True test against Penn State coming up, but they still are deserving to go from 14 to 12 and really just be in the top 12 for being undefeated and being dominant so far this year. Pretty complete team. Like them on both sides of the ball. We'll see what they got this week. Number 11 here, and moving down from number 4 all the way from 4 to 11 was Oklahoma. Tough loss against Kansas State. I know they came back and had a chance. And again, even though there's a questionable call at the end, you may consider questionable, I should say. Maybe some don't. Even though that all happened, it doesn't change the fact that they got outplayed in that game. Plain and simple, a Kansas State team with 2 losses, a game they shouldn't lose, really. So they move down. They have to move down to 11. I don't like that the AP poll has some teams, ranked below them. That should be ahead of them. They're number 11 for me with that loss. That's tough. And I was just talking about last week, the playoff committee is going to have a tough time because there's really going to be 5 teams to choose from that are pretty much even. And I thought Oklahoma would be one of those teams at the end of the year, but upsets always happen, I suppose. Shakes up the college football playoff. And number 10 is going to be the Baylor Bears, from 13 to 10 for me. Undefeated, and that resume kind of looking more impressive now, too. The dominant win over Kansas State, who just beat Oklahoma. And they had some close wins. They dominated Oklahoma State. They beat Iowa State. So they have some ones that were close and some in dominating fashion. But they have a similar schedule to Oklahoma. And they go out and they're undefeated and continue to stay undefeated while Oklahoma got upset. Every week is not a guarantee. Baylor should be ahead of Oklahoma. Very similar schedule, Big 12 team. Played some of the same teams. Baylor's undefeated. Oklahoma got upset, and I thought just completely outplayed. So I think Baylor should be ahead of them. They're number 10. They were at 13 last week. Number 9, moving up from number 11, so up 2 spots, Oregon. They controlled most of the game against Washington State, but then got a scare. They were down with just over a minute to play. They got down there and got the field goal, so that was a little scary there for Oregon. Still, their only loss is the first game of the year to Auburn, a game they could have won. Oregon has the talent to really win out and compete with almost anybody. But they scare me at times, even though they're on a streak right now. They scare me at times, but they moved up 2 spots. They do have a lot of talent. They just need to go put teams away when they have the opportunity to. I feel like I say that every week about them. Number 8, and staying at number 8 actually, is the Georgia Bulldogs. Haven't been super thrilled with them this year. That Notre Dame win doesn't look as good. And at the second that game ended, I talked about how neither team really impressed me. It was just kind of which team played worse was going to win that game. And that is looking more and more accurate now, I'd say. But they have a big game against Florida this week. Neutral site, but in Jacksonville, so see what happens there. That'd be a good game, though, and that could decide a lot here. But Georgia, guys like their defense impressed me, and guys like DeAndre Swift and Andrew Thomas, like those guys impressed me. I just want to see a little more offense, a little more urgency to get the ball downfield. But definitely a good team. One of those teams that may beat you just because how physical they are, how tough they are. So Georgia's at 8, and at number 7, moving up a whopping from 12 to 7 there is Utah. And I like this Utah team a lot. So that might be surprising to some that they're able to move up, 5 spots to number 7 from number 12 to, just, I know it was a dominating win over California. I'm impressed with that win, but I'm more impressed with this team. And you kind of go back, and something that is kind of like unnoticed against USC, their loss is an unfortunate loss. I know USC can pretty much beat anybody having given week, just how they are. But Zach Moss got hurt in that game, and Huntley was actually a little shaken up in that game. I like this Utah team, but again, I'm not predicting anything with this. I just think they deserve to be here. They very well could be undefeated. I take in consideration the injuries that happened in that game, and they're very complete on both sides of the ball. They execute on both sides of the ball. It's a dangerous team. It's a very dangerous team here, and they come in at number 7. And at number 6 is the Florida Gators, moving up 1 spot. The Oklahoma loss will help them move up there. They have a big game against Georgia this week. Number 5 is Penn State. Solid win over Michigan State, but really moving up because Oklahoma has dropped. And so I don't really have to go into too much detail about these ones. And it's pretty much the same thing. Clemson, they move up 1 spot. Not the best resume, but I still believe in this team. Some people kind of slowly forgetting about them. And I think the defense is actually underrated. This might be the best defense in the country. And I think their offense will figure it out, just in time for playoff time. Unless maybe they get upset like Oklahoma, who knows. Number 3 is Ohio State. 2, Bama. 1, LSU. We'll reveal it because it's all the same there. 3, clearly the 3 most impressive teams. Bama with their execution and dominant play on both sides of the ball. Ohio State, basically the same thing. Both those teams haven't really played the most impressive teams. I say Ohio State actually a little more than Bama. Bama, I think, is a little more dominant on both sides of the ball, but pretty darn close. LSU has been my number 1 for a while. They've had the more impressive resume, and it kind of just added to that, beating Auburn this past week in a good game. Now LSU and Bama are going to play each other soon. That is going to shake some things up here. So, I mean, you look at the top 4 teams, and that's who I would definitely put in the playoff today, and that's who I think, actually very well could be in the playoff by the end of the year. Maybe they can consider the Pac-12 champion. Obviously, if Penn State can somehow take down Ohio State, then they would be in instead. I don't see Clemson losing. Maybe they take out one of LSU and Alabama, whoever loses that game, but I think both will be deserving. So we'll just run through a scenario right here. If this was the final four of the playoff here, LSU and Clemson, I would take LSU in that game. Clemson's game is stopping teams, slowing teams down with that great defense, and you can slow down LSU a little bit, but not enough. They would just outscore them, plain and simple, I think, not by a large margin, but yes, they would do it. Bama and Ohio State would be a heck of a game. I would take Bama. I trust actually their defense a little more. I know Chase Young and Kuda, guys like that, are dominant, but I don't think Alabama will have too much of a problem moving the ball. Ohio State wouldn't really either. I just trust more success out of Alabama. That would be a fun game in a national championship type game. And then so I end up with LSU and Bama in the final, and won't pick that one because they're going to play each other in a couple weeks. I know it's in Bama, I guess, a neutral site. Maybe I would take LSU at this point, but that should be interesting. So we see the SEC being dominant here, but watch out for the teams like Ohio State, Clemson, Penn State is still undefeated. I like those Utes. Utes are good. I don't think they can compete with those teams I just talked about in the playoff. I think they can compete with Clemson. They may be able to put up some sort of fight with Ohio State. I don't know if they really could put up that good of a fight with the 2 SEC teams at the top, but I do like that team. both sides of the ball. But that is going to do it for this one. We're back every single week with this video. Hopefully you can join us for that. We got plenty of NFL content coverage as well. Trade deadlines approaching. Things are getting crazy, so we got you covered with all that. Please subscribe. Thank you for watching this video. Goodbye.